All right, let's dive in. Today, we're taking a deep dive into something I think we can all relate to: digital deletion. We've got this really interesting video to unpack, and it really makes you think about, like, how do we make information disappear, especially in the digital age?
Yeah, it's kind of a mind-bending concept, right? I mean,
Yeah,
we think a lot about creating digital stuff, but what about when we want to get rid of it? Is that even possible?
that's a good question. Because, I feel like I delete files all the time, just drag it to the trash, empty the bin, it's gone. Or so I think. But this video makes you wonder, is it really?
Well, not exactly. See, deleting a file isn't like, actually erasing it. It's more like, imagine you're removing a book from the library catalog. Like, the book, the actual data, is still on your hard drive. Your computer just doesn't know where to find it anymore.
So it's like it's hidden somewhere in the depths of my hard drive. Does that mean someone could still find it? Like, bring it back?
Yeah, exactly. That's where data recovery tools come in. They can basically scan your hard drive and try to find these lost files, these deleted files, and potentially restore them. And it's not always successful, but it is possible.
Yeah.
So this whole digital purgatory thing, it raises some serious questions about like data security and stuff.
That's a little unnerving. So, like, what can you do if you have, like, sensitive information you really want to get rid of? Is there anything you can do to make sure it's really gone?
Well, there are some more secure methods out there, like overwriting the data, multiple times with random characters that can make it much harder to recover anything meaningful. But even then, there's this thing called data remnants. Essentially, magnetic patterns, like these faint echoes of the original data, they can persist on a hard drive.
So even if I think I've deleted something securely, there's still a chance, like, bits and pieces could be hanging around.
Oh, whoa, that's intense. So what about big organizations like the government? What do they do to make sure their data is really gone? Yeah, so the video talks about the U.S. Department of Defense, and they really go all out, like physical destruction. They shred hard drives, degauss them,
Yeah.
to make sure there are no magnetic traces left. Like super serious stuff.
Makes sense. I mean, when you're dealing with national security and all that. But there's this other story in the video that I found fascinating. It's about this photographer, Melanie Wilhide. Her laptop was stolen and, the thief wiped the hard drive. But when she got it back and recovered the data, her photos, they were like partially overwritten by the thief's data. It created this really cool, like almost ghostly effect.
Right, yeah. It's like instead of just erasing her photos, it kind of transformed them into something new.
Exactly. It's like an accidental art project almost.
Boy.
What did she do with those photos?
Well, she actually embraced it. She had this whole exhibition and called it, get this, to Adrian Rodriguez with love, like a
Yeah.
message to the thief.
Wow. That's incredible. It's like, even when we try to delete something, sometimes it comes back in a new form. You can't always predict the outcome.
Right. And speaking of unpredictable outcomes, the video also takes us to Ghana. It's become like a major dumping ground for e-waste, all the electronics we discard in developed countries.
Yeah, I've heard about this. It's a big problem, right?
Oh, huge. A lot of the e-waste isn't handled properly. So even if we think we're doing the right thing by recycling our old computers, our data might not be as secure as we think.
No. And so what happens to it?
Well, a lot of it ends up in these massive dumps, and people, they scavenge for valuable materials. But the problem is, like hard drives and other data storage, they end up there too.
And the data's just sitting there, ripe for the taking. Yikes.
Unfortunately, yeah. The video talks about how some organized criminals in Ghana have figured out how to exploit this. They pull hard drives from these dumps and recover data. And there was even this crazy example where they recovered some confidential multi-million-dollar agreements between different U.S. government agencies.
That's scary. It really makes you think twice about where your old electronics end up. So it's not just about, like, what we delete. It's also about how we dispose of the devices themselves.
Definitely, it's all connected.
Yeah.
And it's not just a digital problem either. Even in the physical world, deleting information can be trickier than you might think.
You mean like shredding documents? I thought that was the gold standard for getting rid of stuff.
It's a good method for sure, but, it's not foolproof.
Wait, really? So someone could actually piece together a shredded document?
It's possible. There's actually software out there that can help put the pieces back together, like a
No.
digital puzzle.
No way. All those times I spent shredding sensitive documents.
Yeah, and there's this amazing historical example in the video about the Iran hostage crisis back in 1979.
Oh, yeah, I remember learning about that. What happened?
So Iranian students, they seized the U.S. Embassy in Tehran, and they found rooms full of shredded CIA documents. But instead of just tossing them, they got these local carpet weavers to help them. And they spent years meticulously reassembling those documents by hand.
Wow, that's dedication. It's kind of inspiring in a weird way, like the lengths people will go to get information.
Right. And, the video doesn't stop there. It takes us to a whole other level,
Hmm.
a cosmic level of deletion, you could say.
Seismic deletion. Okay, now you've got me really intrigued.
It starts talking about entropy, that idea that everything in the universe eventually breaks down.
Whoa, okay. That's getting pretty deep.
But it uses this really interesting example to illustrate it. The American flags planted on the moon.
Okay, I'm following so far. What do American flags have to do with deletion?
Think about it. The flags are still there, physically, on the moon. But because of the intense sunlight and radiation, their colors have probably faded to white by now.
So they're like blank flags, ghosts of flags.
Right, and the question is, are they deleted? Or are they just different? Have they been transformed?
That's a good question. It really makes you think about what deletion actually means.
Right. It challenges our whole perception of what it means to erase something.
Bruh.
It really makes you think, like, have those flags on the moon been erased, or have they just, like, evolved, changed into something new?
Yeah, it's like they're part of this ongoing cosmic art project or something. And it makes me think, like, what about all the digital information we try to delete? Even if it's gone from our computers and phones, could there still be, like, remnants out there? Somewhere in the vast digital universe.
That's a really interesting point, and it kind of ties in with this idea the video brought up about, like, how we're so focused on creation, but not so much on deletion. Like, think about how much more often we use the word make compared to words like erase or forget or delete.
Yeah, that's true. We're constantly told to, like, create content, build our online presence, share, share, share. It's like deletion is almost this, like, taboo subject.
Yeah, it's like we don't want to think about the fact that, information might not last forever. Even though deep down we kind of know that nothing really does. What if we, like, shifted our thinking and started seeing deletion as, like, a natural part of the information life cycle?
I like that, but wouldn't that, like, make us less motivated to create stuff if we know it's all going to disappear eventually? I mean, how do you find that balance between creating and deleting?
I think it comes down to being more mindful, more intentional about what we create in the first place.
Mm.
Like, instead of just hitting share without thinking, maybe we should ask ourselves, like, does this really need to exist out there in the digital world?
So it's kind of like applying those minimalist principles to our digital lives, like
Right.
being more selective about what we create and what you share.
Exactly. And when we do decide to delete something, we can do it, consciously, recognizing that we're not just getting rid of data, but, like, making space for something new, finding a balance,
Okay.
because both creating and deleting are important.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like, it's not just about deleting files. It's about, like, taking control of the information we choose to keep and the stories we want to tell.
Yeah, and maybe there's even, like, a certain beauty in the impermanence of it all.
Hmm.
If every single piece of information we ever created just stuck around forever, wouldn't that kind of diminish the value of the stuff that really matters?
Oh, for sure. It's like the fact that things are fleeting, that they don't last forever. That's part of what makes them special.
Exactly. And it all comes back to that ultimate delete button, time. The universe keeps expanding, and eventually all information, even the most durable stuff, will just fade away.
Okay, now that's a little bit terrifying. So, like, what's the point of even trying to control what we delete if, like, the universe is going to delete everything eventually anyway?
Well, instead of thinking of it as, like, futility, maybe we can see it as, like, a form of liberation. Like, if we just accept that deletion is going to happen on a cosmic scale,
Yeah.
then maybe we can be less stressed about our own little attempts at digital erasure.
So it's not about, like, achieving perfect deletion. It's more about accepting that we're part of this, like, much bigger process that's been happening for, like, billions of years.
Exactly. And maybe by, like, accepting that natural process of deletion, we can put more energy into creating things that are meaningful and impactful, right now, knowing that their legacy is going to be shaped by, like, the echoes they leave behind.
I like that. It's like, it's not about trying to control information. It's about understanding how it impacts us and how it shapes, like, the narrative of our lives.
Right. And speaking of shaping narratives, the video brought up this really interesting historical example, how Leon Trotsky was erased from photographs with Stalin. It's a pretty powerful reminder that even when people try really, really hard to delete something, the past always has a way of, like, resurfacing.
It's like you can try to rewrite history, but the truth always finds a way to come out, even if it's just in, like little pieces or whispers.
Yeah, exactly. And those little pieces, those whispers, they can be even more impactful because they make us think about how information can be manipulated and hidden.
It's like it reminds us that deletion is never a neutral act. It's always an act of power, whether it's a government trying to control what people know or like someone trying to manage their online image.
Right. Which brings us back to that big question. What does it even mean to erase something in a world where information is so easily copied and shared?
Yeah, it makes you wonder, like, is true digital deletion even possible? Or is it all just an illusion? It's a big question for sure. Makes you think about, like, the consequences of everything we do online.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the biggest thing we can take away from all this is awareness. Like, we need to be more aware that deletion, especially in the digital world, it's rarely absolute.
So even if I hit that delete button, it doesn't necessarily mean something's gone forever.
Right. It might still be out there in some form, like fragments of data on a hard drive
Huh.
or copies floating around online somewhere.
So, like, what can we even do about that? If it's so hard to truly delete stuff, is there even any point in trying?
Well, I wouldn't say give up completely. It's more about like being realistic,
Uh-huh.
understanding the limitations. And I think that awareness should actually make us think more carefully about the information we create and share in the first place.
So it's like, be more careful about our digital footprint.
Exactly. Like, think about what you're putting out there, knowing that it might have a life of its own, even if you try to erase it later.
It's kind of like planting a seed, right? You might not be able to control exactly how it grows or where it spreads, but you can choose what kind of seed to plant in the first place.
That's a great analogy. It shows how our digital actions have real consequences. Like, just as we wouldn't just go around scattering seeds everywhere without thinking about the impact, we should treat our digital footprint with the same, respect.
Yeah, the digital world isn't some separate thing, right? It's all connected to our real lives, and the choices we make online, they can have a ripple effect.
Absolutely. And as we become, more and more reliant on technology,
Mhm.
that connection is just going to keep getting stronger. That's why it's so important to understand how information works, how it can be used, all that.
Digital literacy.
Exactly. It's not just about deleting stuff. It's about, being aware of what we're creating, sharing, how we're interacting with information in general.
It's like being an active participant instead of just passively consuming, asking questions, challenging stuff, always learning. And it makes me think about that question from the video, about cosmic deletion. Does that make our own little attempts at deleting stuff seem less important? Or does it make the things we choose to keep even more meaningful?
That's a question that really makes you think, doesn't it? And I think the answer is probably different for everyone. For some people, knowing that even the universe will eventually delete everything, that might be kind of comforting, like a reminder that even our greatest creations are temporary.
But for others, it might be like a call to action.
Yeah, to create things that really matter, that can last and resonate across time. It all comes down to choice, I think.
Yeah.
We can either let the entropy, the decay of information just happen, or we can try to actively shape the story, both our own story and, the story of humanity.
By choosing what to keep and what to let go of.
Exactly. And maybe in those choices, we create something that, goes beyond just our own lives, something that impacts others and carries on through time.
It's a good reminder to think about what we want to leave behind, what kind of digital footprint we're creating, something to be proud of.
Well said. So on that note, we'll leave you to ponder all this.
Yeah.
What do you choose to preserve? What do you let go of? And how do those choices shape the story you're telling the world? Keep exploring and keep asking questions, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.